Hello, welcome to Jessie at Home. This video goes along with my bloom shawl pattern, my lavender bloom shawl pattern. And I just want to show you, mainly what I want to do is show you the technique used to change your colors when you're doing every other row is a different color. So it's one row is the darker purple, the next row is the lavender, then the purple, then the lavender. There's a way to do this without having to cut your yarn. So in this entire shawl I only have 4 ends. I have the starting end of both of these colors and the finishing end of both of these colors, and there are no other ends within the shawl because I had a really large skein of yarn, so I didn't have to join at any ends of the skein, and I didn't have to cut when I changed any colors. Okay, so this is a triangular shawl. Here is the center that comes down to the point here, and if you look at the edges you can see a little bit where the colors have been carried. Okay, it gives this kind of wrapped edge look, which if you like is great, and if you decide that you're not that fond of it, you can always do like a single crochet or some sort of border along this edge if that's what you want. So let's talk a little bit about the yarn and the hook, even though you can certainly change those things. The yarn I used, same yarn, different color here. The yarn that I used is from Newton's Yarn Country, and this yarn is called Flash. It is a fingering weight yarn with a little bit of metallic thread running through. Now, the important thing when you're choosing your yarn and your hook is this is kind of a little bit of a lacy pattern, so you don't want to use anything too bulky, but you can do lace, fingering, sport. You could probably even go ahead and do a DK or a light worsted. What you want to do is you want to make sure you're using a hook a little larger than you normally would use. For example, this yarn asks for a E hook, and what I am using is an H hook. Okay, so my hook, my 5mm hook, is a little larger than what they're requesting, what they're recommending on the yarn label, because I want to give it a little bit more of a lacy look. This is also a finished pattern that, depending on the yarn you're using, you may want to block. I did go ahead and block mine when I was done to make sure that I opened up the lace. It was still very pretty before I blocked it, but once I opened up the lace a little bit, it was even nicer. So now we're going to talk about how to actually make this shawl. And like I said, we're really going to focus on the color changes. There are some special stitches in this pattern, including the bloom in it, which has cluster stitches, and in the pattern you will see a link to a video that will show you how to make the actual cluster stitches as well. So I'm not going to go all that in depth into that because that resource is there for you in the pattern as well. So we're going to start off with color A, which is the color that you want to be to have the blooms in. It's the color that you're going to use more of. And we're first going to put your slip knot on and chain 8. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And now we're going to single crochet in the second chain from the hook. I like to use the back or the bottom ridges, so you can see there's one, this is the second one, and I'm going to single crochet into there. You're now going to skip 2 and you're going to make a bloom in the third. So 1, 2, and then here's the next stitch that we're going to use. We're going to make the bloom, which is a cluster, a chain 2, a cluster, a chain 2, and a cluster. So those clusters are 2 double crochet clusters. So there's the beginning of one, there's the beginning of the second one, and we join them together to make a cluster. Chain 2, cluster, chain 2, and cluster. Now we're going to single crochet. You're going to skip 2 and then single crochet in the last chain. So skipping 1, 2 and placing the single crochet in the last chain. Okay, and that's the end of row 1. Now we're going to pull up a loop and drop it off the hook. So you just pull your loop nice and long so that you don't accidentally pull your work out and remove the hook. Now we're going to take color B. Okay, you notice I haven't turned because the pattern has not told me to turn, so it's still lying the same way I was working it. Alright, and it says attach color B to the first single crochet made in row 1. So here is my first single crochet, and I just attach it by grabbing the loop from my slip knot and pulling it through. And that's how I attach my new color. Now you're going to chain 5, which is going to count as your first treble, and a chain 2. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Double crochet in the same stitch. So just make a double crochet in exactly the same stitch. Oopsie. Try not to drop everything off your hook. Chain 2. Half double crochet in the next chain 2 space. Chain 2. Double crochet, chain 2, treble, chain 2, double crochet in the center cluster of the bloom. So you see here's the bloom, here's the center cluster. So I'm just going to go into the middle of that, and I'm going to place my double crochet, my chain 2, my treble, my chain 2, and my double crochet. There are links on how to do all of these stitches within the pattern. If you're unsure on any of these stitches, just look in the pattern and follow the links where it has the stitches and abbreviations listed. Now we're going to chain 2 again and half double crochet into the chain 2 space. Chain 2 again, double crochet, chain 2, treble in the last single crochet. Okay, and I kind of pinch things so that my single crochet doesn't come loose, because that's where this hanging loop is from. So double crochet, chain 2, and treble in that very last single crochet. Now it says to pull up a loop and drop. And now for row 3, the pattern says to turn. So now I will turn. And I'm leaving the color that I'm not using hanging behind my work. I am now picking up color A and tightening the loop. So I'm just going to stick my hook back into color A and grab the end that's attached to the yarn and pull that. There we go. So that I'm attached. I'm back to color A again. I'm attached to color A again. And now you're going to chain 3. 1, 2, 3. And you're going to slip stitch into the last treble from the previous row. So here is the last treble that I did in the previous row. And we're just going to slip stitch into that. See what that did was that brought color A all the way up to the end of row 2. And now I'm going to chain 2. I'm going to double crochet, chain 2, cluster, chain 2, cluster. This is basically a starting cluster, a starting bloom. So in the starting bloom, the first cluster is a chain 2 and then a double crochet, since it's starting the row. Okay. Now we're going to make a single crochet in the double crochet here, and then a bloom in the half double crochet. So it's a cluster. I just want to show you a couple more row turns. Oh my goodness. Got a knot in there. A cluster, a chain 2, a cluster, oopsie, helps if you make the cluster correctly, a chain 2, and a cluster. Going to single crochet in the double crochet, and then we're going to bloom in the treble. Okay, bloom in our treble here, that which is a cluster, a chain 2, a cluster, a chain 2, a cluster. Alright, and now we're going to single crochet in this double crochet. Probably starting to see a pattern here. And then a bloom in the half double. Trying to work out that knot, sorry. Okay, bloom in the half double, and then single crochet in the next double. And then we're going to bloom in the third chain of the beginning chain 5. Okay, so just gotta find that one and then make the bloom in there. And then I want to show you one more row so you can get that pull up a loop and drop and start the next row thing. So you really get the hang of that. So here is my last cluster of this bloom. And now we're going to pull up a loop and drop. And we're not going to turn. It does not say turn. Okay, what it says for row 4 is to pick up color B and tighten the loop. So we're going to pick up color B, just put your hook in the loop and tighten the loop back onto your hook. Okay, and make sure you have enough yarn to work with here. Okay, and now chain 2. 1, 2, slip stitch to the top of the beginning chain 2 from the previous row, and chain 6, which counts as the first treble, and a chain 3. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Single crochet in the center cluster of the bloom. Here's the bloom. We're going to single crochet in the center cluster. Now you're going to chain 3. Double crochet in the single crochet. There's the single crochet, and we're going to double crochet in there. Chain 3. Single crochet in the center cluster of the bloom. Right there. And it looks like, look, when I made this bloom, I didn't actually make a cluster on that last one. I just did a plain old single crochet. I don't know if you noticed that when I did it, but obviously that's a mistake. You can go back and fix it. You can ignore it depending on what you're doing, depending on, you know, how much it bugs you. Okay, and now you're just going to follow along your pattern at this point. Okay, I think you've basically gotten the idea. I hope you've gotten the idea of what I mean when you pull up the loop and drop on the rows. This row will end, and we'll pull up the loop again, and there'll be 2 sets of loops on this side. So at that point we'll turn. Then we'll work one color, and then the other color. There'll be 2 loops. We'll turn. One color, next color, 2 loops, turn. So you're only turning every other row because you're working each color over to one end, turning, then each color over to the next end, turning. And that is how you're able to go back and forth in rows without having to clip your yarn ends and have a whole lot of stuff to weave in at the end. Alright, so hopefully that helped you out. The pattern has, like I said, there are links in the stitch abbreviation section. There are links that show you all the various stitches. In the special stitches section, there are links that show you the double crochet cluster, which is used in the bloom stitch. There is also a chart at the end of the pattern showing this. As always, I ask that you please do not pin or share the chart. There's a photo at the top of the pattern that is great for pinning and sharing, and then you can just provide that photo along with a link back to the pattern so people can actually come to my post to see the pattern, or they can come to this video to see the pattern. Either way works for me. Alright, so there you have it. I hope that helped you out with your bloom shawl, and your lavender bloom shawl, and how to do these crazy little pull up a loop and remove the hook color changes.